BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Thursday, and on Thursdays this year, I've been doing a regular segment about the disappearance of Donna Lass from 1970. Donna Lass disappeared on September 6th of that year, and what happened to her is a complete and pure mystery. But before we begin, there are some announcements that I would like to share with you. The first is that I was once a guest on a show called The Mystic Drop, which is available here on YouTube. I was episode 5, if I recall, but the host of The Mystic Drop, Roberto Roya, interviewed David Icke in episode 21, and I was just watching that prior to the start of this Donna Lass episode here. The full title is The Mystic Drop Episode 21, Freedom, the Matrix, and Spiritual Awakening, and of course, with David Icke. I'm just impressed that he was able to get David Icke on his program. And I had a couple big takeaways from that interview. The first is that I thought that David Icke didn't seem completely engaged in it until he shared some very big bombshells about how other people think. And from time to time on Black Box Online Radio, and I confess this is not connected to the disappearance of Donna Lass, but before we truly begin, but from time to time on Black Box Online Radio, I often talk about psychology, the way other people think, how do people interact in friendships and relationships. And David Icke said something very, very profound, and that is, protect the first domino. And I'm going to use variants of that statement in future episodes. I just know that I will, because he was talking about how, okay, maybe you want to agree to go along with something and you tolerate something that you don't like at first, but then that's the first domino that begins to fall. Then you go along with something that you don't really want to do a second time, and then they all just start falling down. And I was really reminded of that exact experience that I had. I think it was 2012. I can only say that because that was where I was living at the time. And I was trying to prepare myself mentally, learning all about self-help, learning about human interaction, so to speak. But once I actually got into a conflict with somebody, and somebody made a rude remark to me in a public gathering, and I thought, why didn't I just walk away? Why didn't I do something? I did exactly what David Icke was talking about. I did not protect the first domino. I was like, oh, well, I guess it wasn't that big of a deal, and I tolerated a type of behavior that I didn't want, and then, well, that person became progressively worse and worse throughout the year. I mean, the next time you see that person, they say another comment that's a little bit meaner, and then the next time you see them, they do something that is a little bit uncalled for in your mind. So that is definitely one that I would, like I said, I'll be citing that one frequently throughout this program. I think protect the first domino. And the second big takeaway I had from that interview is actually talking about a very similar subject when David Icke said something about abuse, like the people who abuse you will think differently tomorrow. And then the people who abuse you will come up to you in the streets and ask you what's going on. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I think that he tried to show that people who are mean and people who are chaotic are often unprincipled. They often do not have a clear set of values, or even if they can articulate them, they don't live by them. But it's just that chaotic nature. It's just that living in an unprincipled way, and also coming up to you and asking you what's going on. They use other people. So those are just some things that I wanted to share, and you can go over to, once again, The Mystic Drop, Episode 21, David Icke, Freedom, the Matrix, and Spiritual Awakening. And congrats again to Roberto Roya for conducting such a big interview. The next announcement I will share with you is, of course, just a reminder that there is a video on the Horizon Eye Productions channel called The World of the Zodiac Killer, 50 Years of Terror, which was narrated by me, Ned DeHaan, and big shout out to Callum Sean Henderson, the filmmaker, in that one. There had been a couple requests here on Black Box Online Radio to make a list of the confirmed and unconfirmed crimes of the Zodiac. And I had at least one request to write a book about it. And I was like, well, maybe in 20 years, when I've truly been able to comprehend the material. But for now, I made somewhat of a minimal list, and it was all put together, as I said, by Callum Henderson, the filmmaker, the World of the Zodiac Killer, 50 Years of Terror, available on the Horizon Eye Productions channel, always wanting to share that one with you guys. And of course, you can download this program for free at LaunchPad 1. There's a link to that in the description box. A great way to support the channel, in addition to just listening, is to go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse by me, Ned DeHaan. It's a novel murder mystery inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is fictional, and there is always the Teespring page. Feel free to have a look at some of the merchandise, and remember, being weird is not a crime. Over the past several months on Thursdays, I've been talking about the disappearance of Donna Lass, and this is a crime that most people learn about because of the Zodiac Killer connection. But this series is reaching its conclusion. As of now, this will be the final episode in the Donna Lass series. It's hard to believe that this thing has been going on more or less for 4 months. There have been a lot of interludes and a lot of gaps, and I did some things about just about other true crime cases for a while in place of this one. But I think that I had to recognize that without access to certain pieces of the case file, I don't think I can continue any further, and a lot of the Donna Lass case file has not been made available to the general public. But most importantly, I would like to share my observations about the disappearance of Donna Lass with you guys, and to go very quickly through the events one more time. The first is that, as I said, Donna Lass disappeared on September 6 of 1970. She was working the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino, and she worked as a nurse in the first aid station. Now, Donna disappeared sometime between 1:40 a.m. and 2 a.m. The last person to see Donna Lass was at 1:40 a.m., and her name was Joan Bentley. Donna was never seen or heard from again after that. Now, Donna was supposed to complete an entry in her nurse's logbook at 1:45, but the entry remained incomplete. If you read about the disappearance of Donna Lass online, you'll hear something, or read rather, that the entry was interrupted and the pen trailed off the page. I have never seen a copy of this. I have never had the opportunity to examine this document with my own eyes, and I became very suspicious of that in the beginning, that Donna was interrupted when she was completing this journey. I mean, what really is this? Is this just like an extended dash, or is this actually the way they're describing it, that it's trailing down to the bottom corner of the page? I would really want to see that with my own eyes, and I think that that would be a major element of the case file that should be made public, so then you could just either confirm this idea that her log entry was interrupted at 1:45 a.m., or that it is just an extended dash mark, like it's just a long pen line and there really is nothing to it. I think, though, that people definitely want to look at some type of more outrageous aspect of the case, and so many people have built their Donna Lass theories around that pen line, even though I've never seen anything that has been posted online. And it looks like they're trying to say Donna's writing in her nurse's book at 1:45 a.m. Somebody comes, maybe grabbed her and pulled her away, or someone's like, "Hurry, hurry! I have a family member who is sick. They're having chest pains. You gotta come quickly. You're the nurse, right?" And Donna leaves the room, locking the nurse's station out of habit, and then goes off with that person, and that person ends up being the abductor. Well, there are a couple alternatives to that. The first is that did Donna actually see a patient at 1:45 on her shift on September 6th? Well, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that has been made available to the public. We know that her last patient came in at 1:30 a.m., and as I said, she was last seen at 1:40 a.m. So I don't think that there is anything to support that other than speculation. But on that note, I want to review a few more of the pieces of reconstruction that we did during this series, for lack of a better term. And that is that Donna Lass lived in present-day South Lake Tahoe, California. If you read about Donna Lass online, everything will say that she lived in Nevada and she worked in California, and it's just a discrepancy, I suppose, or maybe it's just an inaccurate statement. And somebody actually wrote in the comment section to my second episode on this series saying that in 1980 they redrew the Nevada-California state line, and that could contribute to the confusion in the past. But once we actually obtained the address that Donna lived at, as well as where her place of employment is, very clearly her place of employment still to this day is in State Line, Nevada. She worked at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino, which has since been renamed the Hard Rock Hotel. Her apartment complex was called the Monte Verde Apartments, which is on Pioneer Trail Road in present-day South Lake Tahoe, California. According to Google Maps, it is a 16-minute walk from Donna's apartment complex to the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. And I would like to cite Ray Rand's Zodiac Killer Solved, which says that they found a bag that contained Donna's nurse's shoes with muddied bottoms more than a week after Donna's disappearance. So that would suggest that she walked to work in her nurse's shoes, and multiple people in the comments section said, "Hey, if she changed her shoes by the end of her shift, did that not suggest she had a planned meeting?" Because Donna Lass, interestingly, disappeared on her 3-month anniversary of staying in South Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe region, for lack of a better term. I say this because she arrived there on June 6th of 1970. She had been previously working at Letterman General Hospital, very close to the scene of the murder of Paul Stein, the final confirmed victim of the Zodiac Killer. But, again, citing Zodiac Killer Solved, Donna wanted to take the job in South Lake Tahoe and State Line, Nevada, that area, because she would work the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift at the Sahara Tahoe Hotel and Casino. She was practically her own boss. She's working in a secluded area. No one's telling her what to do. She has more freedom. And throughout the summer of 1970, according to Mike Morford of the criminology podcast, ZodiacKiller.net, he says that through his findings, he's learned that Donna Lass had possibly multiple men in her life that she was dating throughout the summer of 1970, and she definitely had at least one that could possibly be put in the boyfriend level. And when I was talking to Ann Penn on the same program, I'm also the host of the Zodiac Killer channel's Interviews with the Expert series, and I was talking to Ann Penn, who's the author of What If Golden State Killer Zodiac Solved, and she brought up that point very clearly. Donna Lass had a boyfriend, and throughout Ann Penn's investigation, she noted that Donna Lass's boyfriend was never truly checked out by the authorities. And I was discussing this with the final participant in that series, Soren Korsgaard, author of America's Jack the Ripper, and he asked me a question. He asked me a follow-up question about Ann Penn's observation that Donna Lass had a boyfriend and he was never checked out by the authorities. And he said, well, have you ever completely verified that claim? And I'm forced to admit no. On the Interviews with the Experts series, mostly just getting other people to share their research and their journeys and their observations about these true crime cases. But it sounds rather plausible. That is one thing that Ann Penn has shared with me that I do not think is beyond belief. But no, I haven't seen those files because they aren't available to the general public. And I would love to know about how the police were looking at the men in Donna Lass's life, and if she did have a boyfriend who wasn't investigated. I mean, shouldn't there be an enormous red flag there? Because after the disappearance of Donna Lass, there are 2 phone calls that are made that are hoax phone calls, for lack of a better term, talking about Donna Lass having a family emergency. No such emergency existed. And Michael Morford wrote this out on Reddit, and I was very praiseworthy of him throughout the series because he made an observation that I thought made perfect sense. And that was that if Donna Lass had disappeared and been murdered by a stranger, by just a gambler at the casino, just by a guest who was leaving town, by somebody who had no connection to her, then why the phone calls? Why the phone calls? Was it the Zodiac killer just doing some other taunting stuff? I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye. Like, was it the Zodiac killer just being weird? Was it someone who was just getting off on committing a murder and doing a nasty prank to add insult to injury? Or, and I think that this is a much more plausible or, was it someone who had a definitive connection to Donna Lass? Was it someone who was either part of her inner circle, or maybe even if she didn't know that person knew her and that person was responsible for her disappearance? And Morph and I approached this in a very different way. When he wrote out that statement, I thought that he meant that somebody was trying to buy time to destroy evidence. Like, why would you make this hoax phone call if you're connected to Donna Lass? I thought it was to destroy evidence. But Morph actually said something on the interview I did with him that it was more about buying time to get their story straight. Now, either one of those could fall in line with a first-hand connection, or maybe even this boyfriend. I mean, both of those would be relevant, destroying evidence, getting their story straight, because they were expecting that the police would look into them, that the police are going to be searching their apartment or their vehicle, or looking for any sign of Donna Lass. So, I think the biggest point that supports this is, if it were an opportunistic abductor, or just an ordinary gambler at the casino who had no idea who Donna was, and those crimes do happen, where someone is just like, hey, that woman is catching my attention for some reason, I'm going to abduct her. Those definitely do happen. Those events happen. But why would you make those phone calls that could possibly incriminate yourself even worse? That would possibly leave a metaphorical trail of breadcrumbs right back to the killer. Was this just some taunting, murderous jerk? Or was it somebody who was actually either known to Donna Lass, or this person knew who she was? I think it's the latter. I really think it's the second option, that this person knew exactly who Donna Lass was, and he, most likely a guy, went after her for some reason. But aside from the boyfriend theory, the other possibilities is that it, and you guys in the comments section really brought this to my attention, thinking that it doesn't have to be somebody like a friend or even the Zodiac killer, but it could be somebody like a security guard, a maintenance man, a custodian, someone who would have had a lot of intense familiarity with the layout of the Sahara Tahoe, who's going to know about the dead spot, the place where no one is going to be is going to be active. No one is going to be coming into the restricted area. And then that is something that I've thought about so much. I mean, because the comments that you guys have been leaving, and big shout out to Anna Lissette, who wrote out a lot in the comments section. It was more like Donna Lass wasn't even abducted and murdered. It's possible that she could have been murdered in the hotel, and that somebody, like the custodian, security guard, maintenance man, maybe somebody else, maybe a dishwasher, was trying to buy time to destroy evidence, to hide her remains, and of course to get their story straight in case they were contacted by the police. But that would not require Donna Lass to know that person. That would only require the other person to know Donna Lass, develop some familiarity, maybe observing her. But it would also explain why these phone calls took place. And I wish that I had a better answer for you where I could just tell you exactly what I think happened to Donna Lass, but both of those theories seem very plausible to me. Now, some other moments in this podcast series came when discussing the Donna Lass postcard, and it was actually mailed in 1971. So, last time, I was reading off a message from Tom Voigt when he shared something about how on his website it says that an investigator learned and it reported to Tom Voigt that a different investigator had claimed to have fabricated the Donna Lass postcard, meaning that this is another example of a hoax or a forgery, and almost certainly people believe that there are Zodiac forgeries, that there are people writing letters under the name of the Zodiac Killer or under the guise of being the Zodiac Killer. There are people who are writing inauthentic Zodiac communications. But I did not know until Tom Voigt sent me that message that the people that he was talking about on his website were Harvey Hines and Dave Toschi. And Harvey Hines was the person who told Tom Voigt, yeah, Dave Toschi confessed to me that he fabricated the Donna Lass postcard and the one that says the peak through the pines, and it's the Zodiac connection to Tahoe, really. But do you also notice a pattern, though, with the Zodiac crimes? Most of them are united by pieces of writing and or phone calls, and most of the crimes are not united through physical evidence. After the Stein murder on October 11th of 1969, the Zodiac Killer cut off a piece of Paul Stein's shirt and mailed it in multiple letters. Okay, that is a way to link a serial killer to the letters and the victims, but the Zodiac only did that after the Stein murder, not after Lake Herman Road, not after Blue Rock Springs, and not after the Lake Berryessa stabbing, strangely, when the victims actually were tied up and, well, just that, they were stabbed with a knife. Yet there's no piece of the shirt cut off. I am the killer, and here to prove it is a piece of the victim's bloody shirt. Well, that didn't happen after any of the other crimes, so I often see that there are lots of Zodiac correspondences where there's no actual physical connection to what the killer or abductor or person pretending to be the Zodiac is talking about, and I get very, very suspicious. And never mind that the card connecting the Zodiac Killer to the Lake Tahoe area says nothing about the name Donna Lass, or it says nothing about the female victim. And one of my original observations after doing Black Box Online Radio is numerous theorists will try and connect the Zodiac Killer to an unconfirmed crime where the Zodiac targeted a lone female. For example, most famously the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in 1966. But I have episodes on other possible Zodiac victims, such as Joan Webster, who was murdered in 1981, Carolyn Eaton, who was murdered in 1982, and even Donna Lass. The Zodiac Killer did not target lone females in the canonical crimes. And this is something that, as I said, I've never really heard anybody point this out. It is one of my original observations about these cases, and I think that it's rather odd that in the canonical crimes the Zodiac would target couples, a man and a woman, or in the Stein murder, a man is only present, but there are no examples of the Zodiac targeting a lone female. So I think you can see, if this is my concluding episode, that I do not believe Donna Lass was abducted and murdered by the Zodiac killer. And I believe that people like Lyndon Lafferty, who I covered in this series, are total liars. People like Dale Julin, who has a book coming out next year called Catching Zodiac or something like that, where he talks about the Zodiac killer abducted Donna Lass and he hanged her from a tree. I don't think any of that is true. I think that those people are frauds. And not all of them. Not all of them. I mean, a clear example of someone whom I think is a very good person is Michael Cole, who thinks that the Zodiac killer abducted Donna Lass. And I have nothing but good things to say about Michael Cole. The two people that I said just then, though, Lyndon Lafferty and Dale Julin, those people I think are just mischievous. Lyndon has passed away, but Dale Julin is connected to the group the Case Breakers. So I've said nothing but bad things about the Case Breakers because I don't have anything good to say about them. I wish that I did. The absolute low point of this series, mind you, was when I was reading Lyndon Lafferty's book, The Zodiac Killer Cover-Up, also known as The Silence Badge, a book that I had wanted to read from the absolute beginning of this Zodiac Killer journey, and all of the misinfo and incorrect information, the errors in his book, talking about how the Zodiac Killer committed a crime on September 27th of 1969 and then abducted Donna Lass on September 26th of 1970, even though that's blatantly incorrect. Donna Lass disappeared on September 6th of 1970, not the 26th, and then Lyndon also said that the murder of Nancy Benelak in Sacramento occurred on October 26th of 1970. That's the 13-month anniversary of Lake Berryessa, even though Nancy Benelak was murdered on October 25th, not the 26th, and albeit October 25th at approximately 11:30 p.m. That's closer than the Donna Lass thing where he was off by 20 days. But still, even that was incorrect, and that is an example of someone who is just trying to exploit a human tragedy for nonsensical reasons. And I really have no idea why Lyndon Lafferty did that when he claimed to have been a first-hand investigator. I can tell you my guess, and this is a guess, it's not like I'm some type of medium or clairvoyant. I think he was working with some type of ghostwriter or co-writer who fudged the facts. I mean, some guy who was on the trail of the Zodiac for 35 years before he put out his book couldn't even get basic dates and information correct. I mean, he said he followed this stuff from the beginning, and he's saying that he was wrong about the disappearance of Donna Lass by 20 days. I mean, it's not like some guy who just jumped into it and he looked into the case for a year and a half and then he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to write the Zodiac Killer cover-up. No, 35 years before his book came out. I mean, Lyndon has passed away, as I said, so I can't yell at him face-to-face or over the phone. So he's probably missed out on that one because I would absolutely tear him to pieces, verbally speaking. But aside from that, the Case Breakers claim that their suspect is Gary Francis Post, and that he was the Zodiac Killer, as well as the abductor and murderer of Donna Lass, and that he hanged her body from a tree. That one, I think, is purely done either for profit or attention. Sometimes people come up with wild ideas that they might know that they're false, or maybe they're just doing what I called the social experiment in one episode, where I said that they're like, okay, let's just see what happens if we say this crazy idea. And I do mean that social experiment. They just want to see how people will respond to their outrageous thinking. So Dale Julin, who's going to be putting out this Catching Zodiac book, I think would go in that category. And one final piece of summary I'll leave you guys with is, you've been seeing a graphic that's been going around the screen, and that is the Donna Lass poster. Now, I pulled up a website that had been written by somebody named Nick Pelling, and he provided a solution to the Donna Lass code that is on that poster. First, the origin of it, reported in his article, was that it was obtained by Howard Davis from someone who was a first-hand connection to Donna Lass, and then Howard Davis then provided it to Tom Voigt, and Tom Voigt then put it on his website, and then it's, of course, been widely distributed online. But it was a simple substitution cipher to the code at the bottom, and he did this by looking at the final letters, and he noticed that the double N in Donna was consistent with the final parts of the cipher, and the double S in Lass was consistent with the final two letters, so the final two words should have been Donna Lass. Then he was able to use that as the key, and it reveals, be aware, I'm stalking Donna Lass, something. But then he's like, this is most likely a mistake on the part of the cryptographer. It should be beware, I'm stalking you, Donna Lass. Now, if I recall from reading his article, and I did do a bigger discussion on this in one of the episodes, but off of memory, I think that he was saying that one of Donna Lass's first-hand connections, somebody that knew her personally, had the poster created in an effort to draw more attention to her disappearance, meaning that the Donna Lass code is not an authentic Zodiac creation, and almost no other researcher I've ever encountered. I mean, I can't think of a single one who has actually presented that as just this is an actual cipher that has been mailed on the part of the Zodiac killer. But of course, there is a book about it called Decryption of the Donna Lass Code by Lauren L. Swearingen, which I guess will talk more about that, even though you have to pay like $60 for it, which is outrageous. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, where I will attempt to look at some possible ways in which Donna Lass could have been abducted, like what could have actually happened. That thing about the shoes got my attention, and Mike Morford also said in our interview on the Zodiac Killer channel that Donna Lass was afraid of the dark. He learned this from Donna's roommate, Joanne Getchie, her roommate in San Francisco who worked at Letterman General Hospital, and Joanne Getchie was supposed to visit Donna Lass on September 7th of 1970, the next day, so she did not have a planned meeting with Joanne that night, and even though it is the early AM hours. But even from reading your comments and bouncing ideas off of other people, Donna could have had a pre-arranged meeting with somebody, like somebody knows that she's about to get off work, she changes her shoes, maybe gets out of her nurse's clothes and so on, she's in something different, right? And then she had a planned meeting with a guy, with a boyfriend. Maybe it was a different guy that she was dating. I think it was Classic Chevy Cat in the comment section who pointed out that having a boyfriend and dating are two different things. Okay, it could have been some type of blind date that had been orchestrated by person X from somewhere this, that, or the other direction. Somebody had a planned meeting with Donna, and she left work 20 minutes early, locked the nurse's room door behind her. Maybe that was a standard practice at the Sahara Tahoe, to leave the room locked, and she doesn't have to trade off or conference her shifts. Maybe she left voluntarily with someone, although there are no sightings of Donna leaving the Sahara Tahoe. And I think that strongly suggests that she went out one of the back exits. She went out perhaps one of the areas near the parking lot. There are numerous back doors to the current-day Hard Rock Hotel, and I believe that they were the same, that they also had many back doors in 1970. I mean, a hotel and casino, you can get the idea. And that would almost not even constitute an abduction. Instead, Donna just had a date planned with somebody, and that guy did something to her. Where did he discard her remains? I wish I could tell you. I did a couple episodes talking about how he may have hidden her body in Lake Tahoe, or perhaps the show The Hunt for the Zodiac Killer talked about how Donna Lass could have been buried in the mountains surrounding Lake Tahoe. There really is so much ground to have covered that could have been covered. It's an absolute mystery. But when I was talking to Mark Hewitt, author of the book Hunted, on the interview with the Expert series, he said, we don't even know if Donna Lass is dead, Has anyone ever proven that she isn't still alive? And yes, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, Thomas Horan said something very similar when he said maybe she wasn't buried, maybe she was eaten. And I know that's a rough-edged statement, but it's meant to illustrate no one has ever confirmed that Donna Lass was murdered. Her remains have never been found. She simply vanished off the face of the earth. And I've said this once and I'll say it again. When I first started this Donna Lass series, it was because you guys had voted on this. You had voted on this in the comment section about what did you want to hear about on Black Box Online Radio, and I gave you 4 choices, and people voted overwhelmingly for the disappearance of Donna Lass. And I thought it was a great opportunity because I was very unfamiliar with the case. And when I first started looking into Donna's disappearance, I was shocked about how little info there was available to the public. And I was like, what am I going to say? What am I going to talk about? How am I going to formulate any type of theory? But as far as an opportunistic abduction from a coworker, how would that play out? All that would require is the security guard, custodian, maintenance man, dishwasher person to lure her to a place that is off limits to the general public, no security cameras, a dead spot in the hotel casino. Maybe this place behind this stairway, and people do things like that. I've brought up numerous examples throughout this series on how opportunistic abductions do take place. And that could provide another reason for the phone calls, another reason for someone trying to get their story straight, someone worried if they're going to be investigated or not. But that scenario offers a reason why Donna was never seen leaving. And if I can share with you my general thoughts, even though I don't have the strongest articulated theories, if I can share my genuine observation, I believe that Donna Lass did go out one of the back exits. She went back to someone's vehicle, and that person drove her to a different place. Now, was this the mountains of Lake Tahoe? Did this person drive to Rubicon Point or to a different part of the lake area, or did they drive straight into the mountains? Did they drive to Donner Pass? Donna Lass, Donner Pass, the History Channel thought that was so important. I can't tell you where. There's just not a drop of physical evidence going in any direction. But in conclusion, I believe this Zodiac Killer connection is super weak, flimsy, and it's just not holding up. I think that this is all hinged on this one postcard that may or may not have actually been written by the Zodiac. I need to point out, though, that Tom Voigt did say in that correspondence, when he shared that info about Harvey Hines and Dave Toschi, he said, I didn't believe the story then, and I don't believe it now, meaning he doesn't believe that Dave Toschi fabricated the Pines card, but that is all back in the previous episode, so I won't repeat all of that. But I do believe somebody walked Donna Lass out of the back exit, even if it wasn't an abduction and that she was taken to a dead spot in the hotel. That's how she would get out. And some people have proposed that she was placed on a luggage cart and then carted out that way. I just don't know if we can generate that type of detail based on the findings. So I think that we're going to have to let this mystery remain unsolved for a little bit more, and I was really hoping I could get better answers. In some of these unsolved cases, I can tell you all kinds of theories that I have, but as of now, I would just leave it at that I don't believe the Zodiac Killer was involved. I think that either the boyfriend angle or the co-worker angle is much more plausible, that somebody from Donna's inner circle, and it's quite possible she did have a planned meeting that night, and somebody perhaps also knew that 1:40 a.m. was the dead of night, even though it's the early a.m. hours, and they would have gone after Donna Lass at an opportune time. That would be also in line with the co-worker theory. And this episode began with several announcements, but it will conclude with a final announcement. In place of the Donna Lass series, I did a poll for you guys talking about which deep dive podcast segment would you like to take over. And the choices were Jack the Ripper, the Long Island serial killer, D.B. Cooper, or a general discussion about serial killers. And at first, there was a wave of comments that came in for D.B. Cooper, and I thought, oh well, it's going to be another landslide. And then there was an even larger wave of comments that came in for people requesting the Long Island serial killer. I believe it was Kelly Gable in the comment section that said, there are so many videos online about D.B. Cooper and Jack the Ripper already, but there really aren't that many about the Long Island serial killer. But to break from tradition, where I simply don't just count up the votes and tell you the winner, but I'll tell you though, the Long Island serial killer did get the most votes, but I do have to give a winner in the comments section, and that is Studio Steph, who said, Long Island serial killer and more lesser-known serial killers, because Studio Steph's comment got me thinking. And to be clear, the Long Island serial killer did get the most votes, but I will introduce you guys to the Versus series that will be coming next week. And the first episode will be the Long Island serial killer versus Jack the Ripper. I did a previous episode back in the spring about the Long Island about the Zodiac killer versus Jack the Ripper, and I wanted to do more of those because I think that will actually give us some answers. And with the Long Island serial killer, that will be a very frequent topic on the Versus series, but it will be comparing and contrasting the psychological elements of the cases. For example, looking at the similarities and differences between Jack the Ripper and the Long Island serial killer. What is the same? What is different? And how can we learn from that? This comment here, Long Island serial killer and more lesser-known serial killers. Of course you could do the Long Island serial killer and perhaps someone like the Black Doodler, a serial killer that operated in the 1970s in San Francisco, looking again at the similarities and differences, because I think that will reveal so much more about the cases than a lot of people think, because you might learn what kind of personality did this person have, what kind of occupation were they working, where were they living, if we get into the geographic profiling. So congrats to Studio 7, congrats to everybody who voted in that. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the channel, for liking, subscribing, for buying the book Killer on a White Horse and reading it, and all the positive feedback that you guys gave me on that one. And I'm working on the next book as we speak. That'll be out sometime in 2022, but also, anyone who watched the video on Horizon Eye Productions, big thank you to that as well. That one is slowly catching fire, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff on your behalf. And the Donna Lass series was an absolutely, informative and strong journey for me as a person who was mostly unfamiliar with her disappearance until this series. But I think I just hit a wall. Without the case file being made available to the general public, I am unable to develop any stronger theories than what I've shared with you here. But thank you all the same. All right, that's all for me now. I will see you guys over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time to do so, because you can catch next week's episode on the Long Island serial killer versus Jack the Ripper psychological breakdown. So, until next time.